Hey friends and fam, RCA Rocky Mountain Central Regional Chair Chris McAdams here with an important announcement about the upcoming RCA Month of Giving this November. We've teamed up with one of Denver's most amazing nonprofits, Metro Caring, to help them with their ongoing mission of ending hunger and poverty in Colorado and invite you to get involved. What can you do to help? It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. 1. Get involved with our food drive. We're looking for nutritious, shelf-stable foods as well as fresh produce, seasonings and spices, personal hygiene products, and more. I'll be personally driving around the Colorado area to collect donations on Friday, November 20th. 2. Volunteer on site. Metro Caring is always in need of hands-on help and provides a safe environment for you to volunteer within. I'll be out there. I hope to see you there too. 3. Monetary donations. These funds go to help support Metro Caring's primary mission of ending hunger and poverty, but also go to support their additional community resources like online cooking classes, nutritional education, and community advocacy. They even have sponsorship opportunities for businesses looking to make a positive impact. For more information or to donate directly, visit the Metro Caring website at www.metrocaring.org. Be sure to keep me in the loop so we can track our progress by sending me an email at cmcadams@culinary-culture.com. That's cmcadams@culinary-culture.com. Also, feel free to email me with any questions. You can find additional information on the RCA website, on the upcoming events page, or on LinkedIn. Just search for the RCA Rocky Mountain Central Group and request membership. Thanks in advance for your support of a truly worthy cause, and we'll see you in November.
When I was coming up in the military and in restaurants, I paid close attention to the leaders and managers I worked for. A lot of attention was spent dwelling on the feeling that I could manage better, manage the team, the shift, the businesses better than the manager of the day. I didn't think about the myriad inputs, delicate balances, and long hours most managers put into the businesses just to keep the lights on. Today, taking my people management experiences as well as followership time, learning to apply those lessons to other challenges like building a business segment or expediting work but not doing much of the technical tasks, takes a certain level of reflection, self-awareness, and humility. There's a great deal of social science and research that examines leadership and how well leaders perform in their fields, especially in times of difficulty. I like exploring leadership styles, philosophies, and priorities, so I asked 2 leaders in the food industry to share their perspectives about leadership with us. You'll get to hear about a leadership style, Shepherd leadership, from Gerrie Bouchard from Taste Point by IFF, and you'll hear about being people-focused during times of crisis from Chef Mark Serice at Griffith Foods. In both interviews, I was interested to hear how they focus on the needs of their staff as well as the people around them. And once the teammates feel noticed and heard, they perform and solve problems. They take the initiative to address challenges because they've been empowered and trusted that you've hired them thoughtfully, trained and equipped appropriately, and given enough autonomy to flex their own strengths. As I reflect on this, I have to admit that this is the most challenging aspect of becoming a leader. It's not easy to let go, to watch and allow others to do the work that you feel you could do yourself, and it might be faster or done to your expectation if you just took care of it. But that habit isn't leadership, and that's a subject matter expertise, not management. And that's not the best application of your own strengths for the team and organizational role carried now. Gerrie Bouchard, the Director of Marketing and Business Development at Taste Point by IFF, and I chatted on and off at RCA conferences over the past few years, but we hadn't really gotten connected until this summer. She's an RCA board member and leads a working group that I'm volunteering with. Her journey, like so many of our journeys, is not a straight line, and each experience and personal crisis has informed her and created the type of leader she is. In this clip, we focus on her leadership style and where she has seen it empower the team she works on and leads. She also takes a strong future focus on what we should be prioritizing as we seek to build businesses and a profession that moves forward into the future but is fully grounded in its legacy, and recognizes the individuals who forged the way and strengthens the industry overall.
Gerrie Bouchard, the Director of Marketing, Business Development, and Sensory and Consumer Insights for Tastepoint by IFF. So Tastepoint by IFF is the coming together of two legacy companies, which many people listening to this will fondly remember, both Otten's Flavors and David Michael. So IFF had acquired Otten's Flavors and then acquired David Michael and brought those two entities together as this, mid-tier, almost like a boutique-y, flavor company that's really has a differentiated service model and a different way of servicing our customer accounts. So how that's different is that we really focus on mid-tier and the North American market and serving them in a way that's very personal and very hands-on. So we like to partner with our companies, with our customer companies, to really deliver on their needs from a product and from a service perspective.
So I feel like I'm hearing a good bit about kind of your ethos as a professional in the industry. And something that you and I talked about before recording was your passion for shepherd leadership. And I was wondering if you could take the time to share what shepherd leadership means and how that lives out for you.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think that this definitely came relatively recently in my career. I think early on when I was still kind of figuring out for myself, I was definitely very self-focused on, what can this job do for me? Where am I going? What am I doing? What are the opportunities for me? And then kind of a switch got flipped when I realized that that's not even what is really in my core, right? I think it's kind of ingrained in you. Like you have to keep moving up the ladder. You have to keep making more money. You have to keep making advancements or otherwise you're failing. And I think that was a pretty profound aha moment when for me it kind of clicked that this doesn't even feel right. And what feels right is supporting people and trying to build people up, build teams up, give them what they need to be successful. And then you know what? It happens just like magic. It benefits you as well. So I kind of feel like that's the recipe that was correct for me in my career, is to kind of change my mindset and put it in a different direction. So we talked a little bit about, is this servant leadership style rooted in, a religion or a faith-based origin? And I think it's okay for me to identify that, yes, it is, for sure. I think Christianity plays a role in that. However, I don't think it's solely the driving factor. I think that it's also from a business perspective that it works, that it drives businesses ahead. It's profitable. It's economically sound. It's a smart strategy. Because when people are ultimately happy and they feel rewarded, empowered, and, they feel good about their positions, they want to work harder. They want to do more. I know that that's always been very satisfying for me. So I think taking a look at what I wanted out of leadership was really support, empowerment, guidance, for sure. Just like autonomy when it was the right thing. I wanted all of these things, mostly support, and that's really what I wanted to give to other people. So I believe that if you break it down into the science aspect of it, there's like 11 tenets or so of pillars of servant leadership. And there's really like 4 that mostly, I'm primarily focused on. So like empathy is number 1. And I just think that that's something that is just naturally an ability of mine, is to kind of understand, when someone's not comfortable, if someone's kind of feeling not so great. It's really kind of feeling that emotion from other people and being able to leverage that and identify that maybe things aren't going so well. awareness, both self-awareness and, being able to pick up on those signals. Really, the growth aspect, like wanting people, to grow and to advance in their own careers, seeing opportunities for people, whether or not it personally benefits you or not, and kind of pushing them, elevating them, and helping them to get there. And then the stewardship, and really that servant aspect of giving more than you're receiving, right? So it's not an easy thing to do. It's not a natural thing for some folks to put their primary focus on other people over themselves. But when they do it, I think the rewards are just, overwhelmingly positive. So I think that, it's a little, it's not as tangible in some ways as some other management styles. However, I think that when you are an empathetic person who really cares about other people, it's kind of easy to implement.
Absolutely. And I agree with you that it does have faith-based origins. Christianity or other faiths as well, I think can draw some very clear lines there. And I think for us in the service industry, we're cooking dinner for someone else. I guess you could say that that's taking the focus off us and moving it on to the diner or the guest in this case, and helping them or allowing them to enjoy something that you've worked hard to do. But the focus needs to be on their experience and not ours, right?
For sure. For sure.
I love how that can be lived out in so many different ways, in your faith, in your way of work, and in the way we serve each other. I can't imagine you would ever have experienced pushback on that, but are there challenges for when the rubber hits the road with wanting to lead with being a servant leader?
I think metrics are tough. I think that, when you have a metric-based system, that is kind of more of a, demand where, A equals B, right? So there's no A equals B here. It's not so obvious that I'm doing A and then the result of it will be B. And then I'll do C and it'll be exponentially higher the next time and we'll get to D. So I don't know that you can put this on a measurement that shows specific results. I think, I've never looked into it. Maybe there are some measuring devices that would help to do that. But I think that, the results are in the successful execution of it, because, I think that I've run into, some phony servant leaders who say, oh, I'm a servant leader, but really you talk to the people who report into them and they're like, that's kind of BS. That person doesn't really care. It's just the hot button thing to talk about. So I think that, success does come from being an honest person and really putting in that work that isn't always easy, right? It's not always easy to work through this and work through some of those tenets and, want growth and opportunity for people when you're just kind of seeing, so say for instance, your department, if you're helping someone, leave the nest as it could be, that is creating some pain points for you. If you have somebody leave, then you have to fill a role, and that's an uncomfortable, position to be in. So it's very difficult. It's not an easy thing to do, but when you move on and those people can grow inside the company ultimately, is more profitable, more successful. So that's the right decision overall. And it's taking that focus off of how does this then impact me? Because you really can't care about that if you're going to do it right.
That's very interesting. And yeah, I appreciate that you acknowledge that succession planning and developing the people who work for you is not easy, because the team as you've built it now looks a certain way with certain strengths, and you're humming along beautifully. And then when that person becomes a master of that skill set, it is really difficult to kind of unjive the flow so that you can help that person grow. And then you have to bring in someone who has less experience. The group has to go back through its forming stages, and that's not as fast. You don't get as comfortable of hours, so to speak, as you're trying to reform this group.
That's right. Yeah. And it's definitely uncomfortable. And a lot of people don't want that. And that, you have to come up with what management looks like to you and what leadership looks like to you. I'm not as afraid of that scenario as I would be losing people's passion for their work. It's like if somebody is going to be in a position where they're just not reaching the heights that they want to be at, you have to enable them, or otherwise it's going to start to decline anyway, right? So it ultimately is just a smart business decision to help people get to where they need to be professionally, whether it creates unrest for you or not. And I think in my experience, there's been very few negative impacts, if any at all, to going that route. Because once you have a culture that breeds this type of empowerment, other people step in, and take on some of the responsibility of bringing a new person up to speed, or wanting to, assimilate them into the group to make sure that, we don't miss a beat. So I think, it's all about having that positive culture where, of course, everyone's busy, everyone's stressed out, right? There's so much going on. But when there's heart at the root of what you're doing, I think that it's a lot easier.
As I'm listening to you reflect on this, I'm thinking partly, wow, I wish you'd been my chef at different stages in my career. And that kind of segues into being a female leader. I think that informs our style of leadership in a certain way. And I was wondering if you would share a little bit about your thoughts as a woman leader. Does that change how you lead? How do you think being a woman and being a leader has influenced your style of leadership and how you present yourself?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think that, where I am today, I'm going to answer this question a little differently than I would have, say, 10 years ago. I think let's go back there. Let's go back to 10 years ago. Earlier in my career, I don't think that I had a lot of confidence to be real about, what it meant to be a woman leader, and also a woman in a leadership position that had children and had, a family to support and work around the complexities of trying to, do both, right, and juggling all these different things. So I think now, a little, more seasoned, more mature, a little bit more gray hair, I'm more realistic about not having to apologize for those things. And then also bringing forward the fact that I don't want anyone else to either. So I have a team of, some diverse people, different backgrounds. And I always think about the young mom, right, who feels like I have to apologize for things that I have to do to support my children. And when I say that's totally cool, no problem, don't worry, I don't feel that message is always 100% believed, right? I really don't care. I really, at the core of my being, take care of your children. I know you're going to be online later. I see you on at night. I see you on early in the morning. You can balance your own life. And realizing that, I always say this to my team, we're people first. I mean, that's the reality. We can't lose the fact that we're not robots. We're not machines. Although we work in many cases in a manufacturing environment, we are people first. And people have different needs. So going back to being a female leader, I think that that emotional strength comes from, I would never say that, women are better at this and men are better than that. However, I do tap into my feminine side and with a compassionate role, and especially as being a mother, that when you really truly care about someone and you want the best for them, you have to support them. And I think that comes naturally for me.
It's interesting that you say that when you say it's okay, don't apologize for, having to go take care of something in the middle of the afternoon and then you'll get back online later to take care of that responsibility. It's interesting to hear that the receiver may not believe it, because I think that is kind of ingrained in our working culture, especially as women in the working culture, that we try to do it all, but we also can't actually do it all, and we're kind of constantly apologizing to every segment of our lives, um, while trying to do it all. And somehow, even when you have a manager who says, "I trust that you're going to get this done. Just take care of situation A. You'll get back to situation B. It's totally fine." It's interesting that our culture in work isn't quite accepting of that.
Yeah, it is, right? And that's the mission. The mission is to fix that, because I think that, especially, now it's obvious, right? In 2020, we're going through, the COVID-19, working from home, sheltering in place. We've all proven our ability to work remotely and to be very flexible. There's, work-life balance and flexibility and all of these things that are kind of buzzwordy terms that people throw around, but here we are, we're living it. I've never worked in a more flexible, if you will, environment where we have all of the technology that we need and the ability to really kind of craft what our workday looks like. Yet people are still kind of working that 9 to 5, right? Because that's what they're used to doing. So I think that we just have to kind of break that cycle where it just has to be more socially acceptable. If we're going to say that, we're flexible and we're accepting and, more fluid, and technology is at our fingertips, we have to start kind of putting those things into motion.
Yeah, and I think some of early data are showing that people are working more. They are working kind of weird hours because there are times you just have to step off and go deal with the screaming child, or the plumber has shown up to deal with a leak, or whatever it is, the other elements of our lives that are very important. I agree. It's changing the workplace culture of how we think work can be taken care of. Um, and I think it's interesting that one benefit, I guess, of getting sheltered in place is that we're having these conversations. We're learning that we can work so differently and still perform well. Um, we have the pieces in play right now to really make some strong changes in our work culture, whether that's to become more reflective of the type of lives we live, um, or the types of businesses that are future focused.
Yep. That'll probably be the positive that comes out of all of this, right?
Yeah. And I'm choosing to look at that, that this is the time for opportunity to make changes to a system that I think we've spent our careers identifying the broken-ish bits and kind of putting the duct tape where it needs to be, or working around a system. But since we're broken, we might as well stick it back together in a better way, right?
That's right. That's okay. That's my second favorite analogy that you made today. It's fantastic. Yep.
So what are some other kind of broken-y bits that we can start to influence, say if we've got extra time to work on ourselves or in our companies, what are some things that we could do, blue sky thinking here, to
Yeah.
improve our world?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for the last couple of weeks, we've been really working on, I've been working personally on my self-reflection in terms of, diversity and inclusion, and being reflective of what's happening in our world, right? And really understanding, my values, my, moral compass, and understanding then what can I do to make positive changes and positive impacts. And we've gotten, the board of director approval to move ahead to formalize, a really great initiative for diversity and inclusion for the RCA. because I think that it's fair to say that, we are a very friendly organization, and we've always been, open to, supporting people of all backgrounds. However, I don't feel like our organization, especially in a leadership level, has always been reflective of what, the industry that we serve. So we're making changes, and we're doing things better, because that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that we are identifying issues in the world and reacting to them in a positive way. And, we're a small organization, and I personally am just one person. But I think that that's what it happens, right? The pebble becomes a ripple, and that goes out and drives change. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to throw the pebble in the lake, and we're going to hopefully be able to use the RCA as a vehicle to drive positive change, because we have to recognize what's happening, identify who we are as an organization, and what role do we play in equality in our, for our industry and for the nation.
This is really great. I'm obviously personally involved, and I'm really excited that this is a movement that is being requested by the leadership itself. It's not just a few voices off to the side who are like, hey, what about us? There is an understanding in the leadership that for us as an organization to be future focused and to be relevant for the next 25 years, we need to meet the needs of the members who are in and active, and the members that we expect to come join our association and career field. And we need to be ready for them and make sure that they feel that their needs are being met.
That's absolutely it. Yeah. And I think that, it will serve to strengthen us as an organization, and it will serve to strengthen our industry. There are talented, amazing, brilliant people out there of all ethnicities, creeds, all backgrounds, all shapes and sizes. And we want to, make it very known that RCA is a place for everyone. Justin Kantic, he has this great analogy of everyone sitting at the table, right? Everyone's invited to sit at the table. And that's such a beautiful way of looking at it. So it really is about, come, let's have this connection to food. We embrace all of these different, global cuisines. So we're taking that aspect of it forward, and we always have, but like the people that are connected to those global experiences, like we want them to feel represented. We want them to see themselves in the RCA and want to be a part of it.
I love this. I think this is the creed that has always been there for the RCA. When you and I talk about how we found or were encouraged to join the RCA, it was because we saw people that we resonated with, that had skills and passions and interests that we wanted to emulate and learn. And this is exactly that. This is the next generation's version of, well, we want you to also feel like we are a group you want to aspire to be part of.
Yeah. I just remember my early days being with the RCA. Janet Carver was the president, and what a queen, right? She's on the throne, and she's up there on stage, and I'm looking to her as like a young professional. I'm thinking, look at that lady chef up there in such a leadership and in such a commanding position. And it was that moment where I was like, this is home to me. This is where I belong, because, this is the person who is validating for me that some of the kitchen jokes that I've experienced being a woman in the back of the house, that's not what this is. This is a place where I can, raise, up through the ranks and become, president of the association. She's proving it for me. So I want all people to see themselves in that reflection, to say, this is an organization that supports me. It's not just on paper. It's not just written down. It is absolutely the actions that, actions speak louder than words, obviously. So like, I'm seeing myself there. I'm seeing myself as a leader. Would I have run for the board of directors if someone like Janet wasn't that, that change maker and that trailblazer, I'm not sure that I would. So, we needed people like her to step up. Ellison Rittman's another one who's always kind of, to me, these early pioneers of changing the look of the Research Chefs Association and making it, really an organization that embraces women. I don't necessarily feel like a minority in the RCA. I feel like I'm well represented and really well supported.
This is fantastic. Oh man, I just can't believe how fast our hour went chatting about, your origin story. And I just really appreciate how you choose to show up as a professional in our association, because I agree, coming in and seeing other leaders, me seeing you out there, and contributing and sharing your expertise and insight, that inspired me to continue to use the voice that I have with the skills that I have. I have what I have, right, in my hands, and that's what I can bring. And your support and people like you are the reason I feel confident enough to do that. So thank you, Gerrie, for, just being an example for me as my career has grown too.
Oh, well, and right back at you. I'm just so impressed with what you do. I think this podcast is such a great service to our industry. I'm so happy to be a part of it. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to speak with you. And I'm really looking forward to working with you directly in the development of our more formalized DE&I initiative for the RCA.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to be on the Peas on Moss podcast and share and be so open and vulnerable. I really appreciate that. And that is what this podcast is for, is to highlight the humans involved in our industry, with all of our unique stories. But the commonality of all of us, of our human story, is we're here. We want to give you really great food. We want you to enjoy it. We want to enjoy making it in the process.
Exactly. Yeah. And it takes all different types of ingredients to do it, right?
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Discrimination of humans has no place in our lives and our industry. And because each of us plays a role in shaping the future, we must be committed to rooting out injustice and working together to provide even footing for every human within the system. Peas on Moss is focused on food product development, and we are a motley group of food industry professionals. The diversity in our food products and the people who make them are what make this such a delicious and interesting place to work. But it goes beyond just trendy foods and food movements. We are also humans with multicultural backgrounds, fascinating histories, and diverse perspectives and strengths that, when brought together, make up the power and beauty of our fascinating field. I am learning every day so much more about our industry, with all the artistry of culinary and the technology of food production. I'm also learning about the people who have fallen through the cracks, whose work goes unnoticed and whose needs go unmet. As a member of the food industry, I am part of the system with all its great opportunities and lingering inequality. As we continue to learn from each other through this podcast, would you also join me in your individual and industry efforts to push for a more equitable world, where good food can be accessed by all, and where we expect the best from each other? As a cook, I believe that all people should be treated equally without regard to their skin color, gender, creed, or belief, way of living, or way of voting. It's part of the American dream that transcends politics, economic policies, and place in this system. For me, a good food industry-focused resource is the OSC Squared JEDI Collaborative, JEDI, founded by a diverse group of industry professionals from the natural product segment. Find out the latest initiatives, research, and efforts at JEDIcollaborative.com. You can also get details about social justice legal actions at the Equal Justice Initiative, EJI.org. Chef Mark Serice is the Vice President of Global Culinary for Griffith Foods and leads a culinary team of 40 chefs in 18 countries. A champion for Griffith Foods' leadership in the food industry, Chef Mark has helped inform the understanding of the vital role that culinarians play in food product innovation, sales, and voice of the consumer and customer. His journey from the stove to the bench was punctuated by devastation in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and that crisis experience taught him lessons on leadership that he has been applying during the most current crisis, our pandemic. The people focus that he shares echoes Gerrie Bouchard's emphasis on people leadership by recognizing the true human experience of going through difficulties and that the emotions, distractions, and struggles are all part of responding and then eventually rebuilding. Welcome to the Peas on Moss podcast. It is a joy and pleasure to have you on the show, Chef. Would you start off, I guess, by telling us about your involvement in the Research Chefs Association?
I've been involved in the Research Chef Association probably for about 10 or 11 years, almost my entire time during my tenure with Griffith Foods. Most of what I've done in terms of that is really support the other chefs in terms of certification. The conferences are a great way for networking. As I've grown in my position, I've become more heavily involved with like the food waste competition, been involved with other aspects of RCA, much more on the kind of leadership level with Justin Kantic and others that are on the board.
Could you give us a few more details about your work with the food waste competition? I know that's a big focus for Griffith.
It is a big focus for Griffith, and we have a number of partnerships and ecosystems that we work with. So not only is it near and dear to our purpose of blending care and creativity to nourish the world, but it's also part of our, triple line of people, planet, and performance. So some of the partnerships that we have are great examples of how food is being upcycled, whether that is brewer's spent grain from regrained, or it's green banana flour that's sourced out of Central and South America. So it's utilizing these products. It's part of our sustainability platform, and it's a great way for chefs to be involved. When we're talking about food, we're talking about utilizing the food that we have and eliminating those wastes. And the competition is for younger students and people in universities, college, or young chefs. And it's amazing what these young people are creating in terms of figuring out ways to not waste food. And that's wonderful when you're talking about individual restaurants. Our role as a company is to kind of take that and scale that impact to a much broader audience with much larger companies. But the root is still within the chef and the kitchen and those young people that are thinking and acting differently.
I think to your point, developing that mentality early on in our careers, whether that's still in culinary school for a lot of the competitors of the food waste competition itself, or even as we move from kitchen management into food manufacturing roles, bringing a lot of the training and mentality that we had in our kitchens to manufacturing is really vital, because as chefs, we're very careful about our yield and knowing where those numbers are. And we have to carry that mentality through manufacturing because, pennies add up very quickly at the very large levels.
They sure do. Culinary in any food manufacturing company is a core capability. R&D is a core capability, and combining those with other capabilities or other core capabilities such as sensory science and consumer insights, the chef is kind of the center of that and has touch points through all of those. And it's the combination of those core capabilities and the understanding of that core capabilities that really create strategic differentiation in the market.
Talk to me about how you built up your career with Griffith. Did you build the culinary team at Griffith and its international reach?
Well, it started out, I was the corporate chef for the US. And at the time, which was about 13 years ago, it was me and one other chef. And so we did a lot of cross-functional kind of work. And so as the company began to realize that culinary really does play a role in driving the business, they put a lot more emphasis into what culinary can do besides just presentations. Armed with a little bit of food science knowledge, or a lot of food science knowledge, and armed with some access to consumer insights, we became a driving force for sales. And as with any company, as sales increase because of those efforts, the team is allowed monies to expand what they could possibly do. So that expansion built upon expansion. We ultimately divided our chefs amongst segments in the industry so we could have a complete and narrow focus on driving new and profitable business. My guidance is in terms of strategy to help get better business, or to maintain business, or to grow in areas or segments, to bring innovation from one area of the world to another area of the world that may not know that, to look at global trends and see how they're affecting and rippling out throughout the globe, and where will they hit next. We rely on a lot of two-way communication between our chefs to understand what's going on in their markets, and how we can respond and help them from other areas of the globe.
Let's talk a little bit about crisis management. Again, you have a global reach. Your chefs probably came into the COVID crisis at different stages or times of the year at this point. How did you kind of work with your regional leadership? And obviously, with an international company, you have global leadership of the organization. How did you work with them to serve customers in crisis management here?
So, it may have been at different times, but in the reality, it was pretty much universal. We had slightly different stages, but the company acted as they knew this was going to expand, and to be prepared for that. And any crisis management begins with, responding, and responding quickly. And we kind of have a three-part view of the COVID-19 crisis. The first is respond. With responding, the first paramount need that is our people, the safety of our people. So that was the primary kind of focus, and it still is. We're still in that responding phase, ensuring the safety of our people, the safety of our people's families, and of course, the safety of the food that we're producing. So doing things like staggered shifts within our plants to ensure social distancing is still adhered to, temperature checks for all employees. We've done things like create family care units for our employees, especially in Latin America, in which each one of the families receives a kind of care package of hand sanitizer, a face mask, and some basic information in their local language on basic sanitation during this crisis. We've done a number of those things, but really what it is from the communication part is using the global team to work directly with our regional leaders to implement the policies and procedures locally. constant communication and situation reports allow us to follow up. So like many companies, we're talking multiple times a day with multiple regions as the situation changes. So those situation reports not only are being done by commercial teams, they're done by individual capabilities as well, like culinary. So I talk with my chefs a minimum of twice a week, one to the regional directors and the others to each individual chef and all of the units, to understand what's going on within their markets. That situation report is helping the global team figure out not only the business and to ensure business continuity, but to also help us forecast and predict what's going to be happen in other areas of the globe and what's going to happen post-crisis. But hopefully that answered your question.
It absolutely did. And based on your experience with Hurricane Katrina, were there moments of responding to this crisis that you felt you wanted to change from how you had responded to the Hurricane Katrina response?
Wow, that's a good one.
It's a bit loaded.
It's very similar for me. My world changed when Katrina hit. And several people that I've mentioned that to say, yeah, but that was a local, thing. That was not a global thing. At the time, that was my globe. So it was, in theory, a global catastrophe. It's very similar with the things that we're experiencing now. And some of the things that I learned in Katrina, I use today for this crisis. The first of which is you got to connect with people. Being isolated and being separated from not only family members, but your coworkers and your colleagues, and connecting with them the best ways you can. So a lot of virtual chats, using that camera, which sometimes we really don't want to, but that connection to people, kind words, that social connection of togetherness and being in the same boat is a very powerful tool in dealing with a crisis. You're not suffering alone. You're not feeling this effect alone. Everybody's feeling it. And that creates a lot of not only sympathy, but synergies on let's work on this together. Let's do this together. And you're getting multiple creative ideas to come out of this. With Katrina, it was the same thing. People were adapting and changing how they did their day-to-day lives, how they do their day-to-day businesses, how they think about what's going on today, tomorrow, and the next day. There's a great unknown, but focusing on the near term and going day by day and tackling those things day by day, eventually we will stumble out of this.
I like that. Eventually we will stumble out of this. I think there's a lot of language around what the rebound may look like and if we're going to be ready, which companies will be still standing, mostly intact.
Right.
I wanted to go back to the other two phases that you mentioned with the Griffith response, the first one being respond. What were the other two phased responses that the company had?
I apologize. Is respond, then it's going to be recover, and then finally it's build. So we're still in the respond stage. The recover stage is kind of yet to be seen. What does the financial market look like? How long does this last? And how is the landscape of the food industry going to change? Perhaps forever. And so we see a lot of the, what we consider traditional segments of the food business blurring, where food service is becoming delivery, or they're becoming meal kits, and you see e-commerce selling retail. So you see a lot of blurring of those. So what is the market going to look like? Who are going to be the leaders within that market? And how do we pivot and change from kind of that before Coronas versus after Coronas. We could call it, BC and AC. That what it's going to look like. No one really knows, but we have to be ready for multiple scenarios. And our leadership is looking at what are the possible scenarios that may arise post-crisis. And, with any kind of, analysis, you're going to end up with a quadrant, and there's going to be, between 4 and 6 possibilities broadly of what could happen from this crisis. And the kind of target is figuring out probably an average of those scenarios to shoot as a target. And if you do that, then you're kind of prepared for the other, 4 or 5 scenarios that may actually occur. So simultaneously, you're working on multiple scenarios and reactions that you're going to be planning for, whatever the outcome.
When you look back at your time not in Katrina, when you look back at your time in New Orleans post the Hurricane Katrina, because there was a lot of uncertainty in the sense of aid that would come to New Orleans, how quickly people could get moved into safe spaces, and then certainly once the water cleared out and you went back to look at the properties, looking at rebuilding. Talk to me about how rebuilding looks when you're planning it versus how it felt when you looked at New Orleans and started to build and ultimately left that area.
The shock and awe of the damage was the first thing you needed to get over with. And, when I say that it was a kind of a block and tackle, as things came down in front of you, whether that's battling with insurance companies or trying to figure out, once you did battle that, how to get things done. There was only so many contractors to do repairs and get things up to speed. And things came up. Not only do you have financial concerns, physical concerns, and then there's job and safety concerns. And you kind of have to hit one of them at a time. So with Katrina, getting through that was a day-by-day experience. And you can only control a little bit at a time because you really did not see what was coming. It was an evolution. But the people in New Orleans have a joie de vivre or joy of life that, they've lived through this before. And so they tend to find ways to celebrate even within that kind of miserable situation. And it's the small victories that really are what gets people through. I can remember my mother being so excited that she was able to actually get a loaf of French bread from the grocery store because it had been missing for so many weeks. And called all of us to tell us that she had French bread, So it's those small joys and those small wins and those small gains that keep us rolling. And in this crisis is exactly the same. Each small win every day, whether you're connecting with a coworker you haven't talked to in a while, or you're connecting with your customer and understanding that they're working through the same things, you can find small amounts of joy within that. And that's what gets you through each day.
I've been really interested to see how we're reaching back into cooking, whether we're chefs and culinary professionals who finally have time to be in our own kitchens, or some friends and family of mine are discovering their oven on buttons for the first time. I loved that you mentioned earlier that food is such a universal language. Any, linguistic barriers that we might have had 5 minutes ago really does dissipate when we start to look at food as a way to communicate care and strength to each other. How are you kind of looking at food, how are you talking with your culinary and R&D teams with food right now?
Well, cooking is therapeutic. You often hear bakers talk about it, but most chefs will tell you that when they're home and they're stressed, their first go-to is to create. And this is no different. And what we've decided to do kind of universally around the Griffith Globe is you're having these thoughts and you are creating in your own kitchens. Why not record that? No chef coat, no toque, no. What are you cooking for your family? And what are you cooking that brings you joy? We all reach for things to eat when we are either stressed or happy or sad. So, this allows that free time and free thought to be creative within your own pantries. And since many of our pantries at home can get quite limited during this crisis, you get really creative of what you can come up with. And I think about, the cuisine and early in this previous century, a lot of war and famine and pestilence occurred, and sometimes the simplest dishes became family favorites. When you have limited ingredients or when you have limited availability, that creativity becomes the most delicious sauce. Because you are forced to work within a smaller set of confines, yet you're not going to sacrifice on taste or flavor or even presentation. So we've asked our chefs to kind of record that and share it because it makes people feel good. Why do we watch cooking shows? It makes us feel good. So we've asked our chefs to do that, and it's been amazing to see the response of what people are creating. Some of them are tying it to some of those trends we mentioned earlier. Some of them are using it to educate their customers. And others are just cooking for absolute fun in their families. And it doesn't matter. It's the idea that we're still using our hands and using our skills to create.
Absolutely. Plug in and go faster with Trace Gains. Talk to a Trace Gains representative to receive a demo and discount just for listening to this podcast. Head over to tracegains.com/NPD-podcast today. It was so valuable to hear Gerrie and Mark's perspective on the podcast today. In business development, I do a lot of project management, interpersonal connecting and coaxing, and reprioritizing. And the conversations today have helped me reframe what I should be stressing about. When you think of the businesses with whom you work, you're probably also thinking about the contacts within those organizations that you enjoy working with, selling and buying, innovating and sharing. That's the human component of our industry, and this is the part that I'm most passionate about. I love the work that we do, but I especially love learning about the people who do the work. Whether we're officially part of the product development process, such as research chefs, culinologists, scientists, engineers, food safety and quality specialists, sellers, buyers, supply chain magicians, marketing and market research experts, or engaged consumers. This is why Peas on Moss is here, to share the insights of the people who do the work and provide you an idea of how this world of R&D works. Special thanks to Moon Palace Productions for editing, to Icon Foods and Trace Gains for sponsoring, to my Patreon patrons, and to my podcast guests who chose to share their stories and expertise with us. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a corporate or private sponsor. 2020 hasn't been an easy year, and I would love to continue producing the show in 2021. Would you help? Please visit peasonmoss.com to get details or look for Peas on Moss on Patreon. Thank you for listening to the show. See you next time.